So we're here in Indiana. How's it been? How's the Global Entrepreneurship Congress been?
It's been great. It's been very intense, very busy. There's been, I think there's about 3,000 people here, or something like that. So it's a big scale thing, which has pluses and minuses. So for me, I've made some good contacts, but you'd like to do more. But because there's so many people, you just get little sort of snapshots of conversations rather than getting any deeper. But no, it's been good.
Yeah, I think the good thing is they're being recorded. So there's a few sessions that I haven't made it to that some people have mentioned to me. And it's like, oh, I'd love to have been to that. But I've learned the online still been.
There was one finishing off yesterday, and I had a phone call to take, so I did that and came back and thought, do you know what? I'm probably not missing too much. And then afterwards, chatting, some people were saying that was amazing. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do.
What was your? I guess then that's a good lead into what was your favorite session? Do you have one, or is there something that really you took away from anything in terms of the sessions?
There were, there's quite a wide range of sessions, and it's sort of hard. It's a bit different at the minute. What I need is, to be honest, to sort of sit down quietly and reflect, and sort of almost go back through my diary to check out all the different things, because there was a lot and it was quite intense and it was going on. But no, it was very good. There was a good one yesterday, which I enjoyed, which was all on youth entrepreneurship.
Yeah, funny. Someone else has mentioned that too.
Yeah, that was really good. There's a guy who's been doing a lot of work out in Southeast Asia, and then is connected into another organization whose name I've forgotten. But I met the CEO of it yesterday, and I'm going to follow up because I think they're based in London.
Right.
But yeah, so there's a really good connection there, and I think it also sort of through that talked to me a little bit about placemaking, and about the role of entrepreneurship in that, and when I'm come back into the youth thing, we were talking about school engagement, youth organization engagement, connecting young people, and a theme that was coming through a lot was about problem solving, entrepreneurship to problem solve. And when you're looking at that placemaking thing, you're looking at, well, what are the challenges, but where are the opportunities? And entrepreneurship has a role to play there.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned placemaking, because I caught a few sessions, and which is, I thought, quite unique. We don't need to go too much into it, but one of the unique aspects of what I heard on the placemaking thing, it was on one of the Australian talks, was how much their faith-based communities plays into it. Now, obviously in Northern Ireland, that's a very different thing, but
yeah,
it was interesting to hear how in some rural communities in Australia, the church plays a big role in connecting to resources, and in here in the States, the library actually plays that role too. So our libraries are very much, resources for education. In the States, you would be able to go to a library and get be connected with a business advisor, or be connected with a benefits advisor, so that it's very much a resource, a library of resources rather than just a library of books.
Yeah,
that was quite interesting. It sort of plays into entrepreneurial ecosystem building, which is something I wanted to have a chat with you about, because that also is the most popular term here.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial ecosystems, or entrepreneurial ecosystem building. They've got an art exhibition of 10 different theoretical models of ecosystem building. So they're really geeked out on it. It's not a term we hear much. It's getting better in the UK, but here it's proliferated across. People literally label themselves as an ecosystem builder, whereas traditionally would have probably been an economic developer in what we would be most familiar with in Northern Ireland or in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Ecosystem building is, in fact, I think, there you go.
You're down as an ecosystem builder.
Ecosystem builder. And yeah, it was a term I wasn't overly familiar with, and was trying to get my head around what does it actually mean. And really what it is, I mean, we talk about infrastructure, and the supportive infrastructure for entrepreneurship and enterprise, and what I'm getting at from here is, just as you're commenting about things like libraries, about faith-based organizations, we have a tendency to put things in our box, and very much sort of, right, that does that, and that does that, and that does that. Whereas here it's integrated, much more integrated, and everybody's sort of got a role to play. You sort of think, I mean, what's a library got to do with entrepreneurship? Would it be our thinking? But actually, it's got a lot to do with it when you're talking about here, because it's connecting people, and that's a big theme as well. Was about connecting people and collaboration. I don't know if you picked up on that, but there's definitely a sense of like we're here to build communities and to build place.
There's a shared mission, isn't there?
Yeah,
There's like
that's exactly it.
everybody's working towards the same goal, and how can you? What's unique about you and your organization to contribute to that mission?
Yeah,
And that is an important point, because you do see within entrepreneurial ecosystems as well. Like if you think, I was in a session yesterday, and it was all about the sort of data around measuring ecosystems, right? So we had people from OECD, we had like, the real data geeks in there who I love, and that's why I was in the session. But it was interesting because Daniel Eisenberg, who, if you don't know, Daniel Eisenberg has written so many different things about entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and actually coined the term entrepreneurial ecosystem several years ago. Love his stuff, great guy. But he interrupted the session, as in like stopped the session. He was just a member of the audience, and said, "You're talking about this all wrong. When I talked about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I never meant it to evolve into entrepreneurial ecosystem building." And his argument was, you can't build an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a natural thing, and he said it's much more like a swamp. You can't build a swamp. You can cultivate a swamp. You can catalyze in different ways, but you can't build it. It's a natural thing, and that's something that I found quite interesting. And another new word I learned yesterday was topophilia, which is love of place,
okay.
and how that plays into particularly Indiana's ecosystem, around how their love of this place, and it's like they're very proud.
Yeah,
They're very proud, but that actually drives how they act as an ecosystem. So instead of trying to copy someone else's ecosystem and say, "Oh, that's great, let's take that model and move it to Belfast or move it to Edinburgh or Glasgow," it's actually the wrong approach from what Daniel Eisenberg would say, which is you got to look at like what you've got. What's your specialties? What's the resources? Map your resources, and then cultivate the things that you want to become of.
And the interrelationship between things, because yeah, I mean, you're right. You can see there's a real pride in Indiana, and in Indianapolis, so from the people here, and that is a sense of shared vision that people have. So there is the shared vision, which creates, everybody in their own role is driving towards the same thing, which is the betterment of Indiana, making this place a good place to live, and making this a good place to set up grow businesses, which are then in their own right problem solvers and finding ways of making things better. And I feel that I was in that session you're talking about with the Australian guys and the faith-based role that was being played there. So, and one of the things that I took out of that also was just how connected they were as a community. So when they were talking about, there was in fact it's just, I think, live now in major floods in and around their community, and the response to that, and how that has really pulled everybody together. And it's something that I really feel we, back home could learn a lot from, because I think we are so fragmented. Even within our sort of ecosystem or in entrepreneurship, we're fragmented and we're protectionist. We're sort of collaborating like that, yeah, I'll help you, but don't look at my homework, type of thing. Whereas there seems to be a much more an openness and a lack of sort of, fear about getting involved and opening up and saying, yeah, okay, let's partner, let's work on this.
I think we had a short conversation with this the other day around size. The scale of an ecosystem does depend how well you can collaborate, because if you have the scale of a state, millions of people, then there's enough people to help, and there's enough justification, as I guess, for the ESOs, the enterprise support organizations. Or if you're in a really small ecosystem like Northern Ireland, it's even more important, I think, to cultivate what exists and to avoid duplication and to do that bit. But I think the interesting point is around a shared vision.
Yeah.
So like, because we can have that conversation, I can't have that with others who's not from Scotland, England, or Wales. But from Northern Ireland, like in our case, we know the ecosystem quite well. But it's an interesting one, because when you have that shared vision, like we're seeing here, everything is about Indiana the bold.
Yeah.
Right? So it's about bold, it's about being bold, it's about making bold statements, it's about, taking bold steps. And that's their mission, that's who they are. And there's the Denver one. So like Denver have a shared mission and a statement. It's like Denver never sells. And they've got the biggest startup week in the world. So again, never settling means you're always pushing for more. So that idea of like having that shared vision, personality, brand, or whatever, I think really helps for everybody to coalesce around that and be like,
Yeah.
this is what we're pushing, this is who we are.
Yeah, like that was, I think it was Boulder, Colorado. They're talking
Yeah.
about that too. It's like just how impactful they are on the world stage in terms of startups and growth, for the size they are compared to other regions. But again, it's about coalescing. It's about saying, "Right, this is what we're about, and we're going to make this work." And yeah, I mean, the critical point in all of that is about sort of saying, like, how do we come together and work collaboratively? Because exactly what you're saying, Indiana, the state of Indiana, it's compared to us, it's massive, and the resources are massive, and the funds that got pumped in from the private sector, from foundations, as well as through state intervention, are huge. But that makes it even more important for us to say, right, we've got limited resources. However, we do have resources, and if we can collaborate properly, get around a joint shared vision and really engage, we can make the most of these resources.
Totally. And that idea, Claire from Orbas always says it every time in there, and it's a really good point, is, people talk about 6 degrees of separation. Northern Ireland is 0.6 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, so arguably it should be easier.
Yeah.
In many cases to collaborate in that way. But I think we're doing great. Like, I think we're in a really good trajectory in NI, and it's interesting to be here and seeing others who are further ahead and doing it at scale. And to finish up then, just to make sure we get the last bit of value of this.
Yeah.
In terms of those who maybe haven't been able to make it to Indiana, is there like one idea, one thing, one takeaway that you think, this was worth the trip, or this was the thing that changed my thinking on something?
It's back to the same theme, but there was a session I was at which was about, public-private partnerships. And actually there's a guy, I'm just looking it up on the phone there, a guy, David Watkins, he's sort of like the head of economic development, enterprise support in Indiana. And he was very much talking about the role that they have to play within this is an enabler, and is about opening up and engaging with particularly the private corporations, and how much that the private corporations actually get involved there, releasing capital into the system by engaging with and helping startups to look at solving problems within their supply chain,
Yeah.
and that type of stuff, which creates opportunity and builds that ecosystem and jobs and all the rest of it. And I was really impressed with the way that he spoke about just how open they are and how engaged they are with their stakeholders and their partners. This wasn't about saying, we're going to be state of Indiana and we're going to do it and we're going to badge it. This was about them saying, okay, look, we have a role to play here, but it's only a role to play with many others, and we can only really make this work if we're doing that together. We're all on the pitch together, all part of the same team. And I really do think if, we talk about stuff like that at home, but the reality is that there's too much fragmentation, and there are too many organizations that are self-focused rather than looking at that broader vision. So if there was anything, if we could encourage organizations to get around the table, to go into one of the other sessions, talked about collaboration, capital, co-design, and if we could really do that, and through doing that, utilize the resources we have, I really do think we could have a real significant impact, but a positive impact.
Totally. Super. Thanks for the chat.
No worries. Good crack. Good to chat.